dear friends, my lovely audiences, my dear friends of the community, welcome again to the discussion of election. Today with me on the East-West Show with Jenny TV is my big friend and a friend of the community, big friend of the community, Mr. Bruce Whitaker, Mayor of Fullerton, a beautiful city, and now the candidate for California Senate, 29th District. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack. It's great to be with you.
All right, very good. And you know, this is not the first time. During the past several times of you and I on the show, we received lots of feedbacks. Some comments respond. Some even expresses their decisiveness of the moment that we really, in terms of talking about democracy, make sure that we choose the right person. Because the other day I made a call, picking the right one for the job, right? And they kind of answered that call, saying, yes, it is time, right? Today, we named the subject, the title of today's show, The Time Is Now. We believe time is now. We're in May already. The June 5th election is only a little more than a month away. The absentee ballot has started already. So once again, it is the moment. So how do you want to bring the information of update of your campaign, sir, please?
Well, what I'd like people to know is that they have a rare opportunity in this election to choose someone who is truly a representative of the people. It was my goal when I got involved in politics. It's what I've done as an elected office holder. And it's, as an activist, what I thought most elected officials weren't doing, which is really listening to and being responsive to the people. And I want people to know when they elect Bruce Whitaker as the next state senator, when I make a vote, that vote is coming from the best information available from them and my best judgment. It's not some big contributor or some special interest forcing my hand and making me take a vote against their own interests. So I think they'll have a true...
In which case you're a puppy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Just absolute puppet.
Yeah.
I'm not a puppet. I intend to be a representative for everybody in the 29th district.
All right. That's a very sounding comment, and that's a very sounding statement, too. By the way, now that said, though, we would a little bit stretch that subject to make a point. The point being that, if I may, I want to ask you the following question. What is the distinction or differences in between politician apprentices of certain partisanship and politician of politics? In other words, what is the difference between politics and the partisanship? So you have any comment on that?
Well, partisanship approaches things as a team, that you would be a member of a team. And while generally that's our system as a two-party system, that's part of the way the legislature works, I think you're only being of value to that team when you're keeping them responsive to the people who they're sworn to represent. So I think to be that loud voice, even in partisan circles, about good policy, and that's the difference to me, it's about good policy. And good policy is good politics. So I might differ from my friends, on the same side on policy, but I would be taking them in a direction which I think would make the party stronger. It would make the overall agenda stronger. So I would have no problem doing that. Most of the time I do lock horns even with people in my own party.
Well, that probably would be exactly the difference that gets you voted, gets you elected. Because people are, these days, getting more and more tired of partisan politics. For example, I still remember a conversation that I had between me and Mr. Stephen Sham of Alhambra, a long-standing council member of that beautiful city. That day I asked him, what is your definition of local politics? He says, well, local politics is politics, the kind of politics that there is a big tree at the cross section that blocks the traffic. Okay, should we cut it down or not? So he says, regardless of whatever partisanship, a tree blocking the traffic is a fact. How you consider it has nothing to do with the partisanship.
That's true.
Am I right?
Right.
For example, in California, now we're talking about the the gasoline tax. We're talking about the increase of registration for $175. To the constituents, dollars are dollars.
Right.
They are the dollars out of their pocket. There is there or is not there, partisanship involved.
There is partisanship involved. The competition between the parties is who gets to handle the money. So there's a crony side to this, which I very much detest, because monies that we pay in taxes should go for purposes that benefit all of us. Both parties will jockey to try to seize control of that money and use it in ways that maybe aren't the best use for us. So in that way, I'd be a bit of a whistleblower on the inside as well. When I'm seeing waste or when I'm seeing money directed in the wrong directions, I'll speak up about that. That's what my oath would compel me to do.
So, as we can see through the the above three statements, it is clear that my friend Bruce Whitaker has a strong set of mind that he will, regardless of whatever partisanship, do the fact that he be the guardians of the public money. And he will be the guardians of the voters' money and make sure it is now neither represent the left party or the right-hand party. It represents the voters. And secondly, he want to make sure, in terms of whoever gets hold of the money, though, is the money used for the right purpose.
And Jack, what you said earlier was completely true about all politics being local, and that's really where it makes a difference. To have someone who's a representative for you, it means that your emails get responded to. It means that you'll get called back.
Yes.
It means that someone will actually respond and we can have a dialogue about what's going on. And everybody, all the constituents out there, they're the eyes and the ears that help the office to perform better. And so I depend on that, and I have a good reputation. Most people in my city would let you know that I'm the council member that responds, that returns emails and phone calls, and actually is available.
That's very true. That's very true. And I probably owe my audience a little explanation why I and my team and EDI, the GNE TV, chose Mr. Whitaker, the one that we support, the one we endorse, the one I endorse, the one my team endorse. It is exactly because the set of a beautiful mind that he has, right? That set of beautiful mind speaks the loudest. No matter how many slogans you use, no matter how big a supporting party like a big bank behind you, it is the point. It is the set of mind that makes a difference. It is the set of mind that makes you elected, right? That is the point. So, and that said, though, so far between now and between last time we were here and then now, there are lots of progresses.
There is. The campaign is moving forward rapidly. Anyone who's interested in yard signs, we've got plenty of those to go as well. I have some fundraisers scheduled coming up. Anyone who's interested in helping is more than welcome. Just please contact my campaign. I was going to mention a little bit earlier, just a sidestep though, about you were talking about the gas tax, and now they have the threat of the water tax coming at us. And I'm a board member of the Orange County Water District. I'm also a commissioner on SAPA, the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority. And this new water tax is going to be another lethal thing for our wallets. It's going to directly, for the first time ever, tax water and also water connections for everybody, all residents in the state, all businesses. So this majority in Sacramento, they just continue. They continue to find creative new ways to get in our pocketbooks.
Exactly. We all understand, as a common sense serves, that the tax money and also water are the bottom lines of our livelihood, right? Whoever gets strangled on those two are the enemies that we want to vote them. We want them out of the office. Whoever holds those issues to the benefit of, in favor of the constituents, though, they are the one.
Well, SB 623 is this bill. It's a 2-year trailer bill, and I have no doubt that Senator Newman will be very supportive of this as well. It's a way for the state to raise hundreds of millions of new tax dollars to whatever end, we're not sure.
You mentioned Mr. Newman. He's out of office, is he?
At the June 5th election, we'll all get the opportunity to vote yes or no on recall. And I'm urging a very strong, resounding yes, because Senator Newman has underperformed, has gone in the wrong direction of expectations.
No, the recall was in force already, right?
No, it'll be June 5th. And so on the ballot, there will be two questions. The one question is, shall this officer be recalled? And that would be Newman. It'll be a yes or no vote. We urge a yes vote. Then, in the event that this officer is recalled, these are the replacement candidates. In this race, there are 6 candidates. I'm one of them. And I'd very much urge and appreciate your vote and your support of your audience out there.
To the audience, it is quite clear. Well, we don't want to recall a person for a person being the person.
Right.
We recall for what the person has done so far.
For actions.
To
yes.
me and my wife, my kid, my family, whatever, whoever tries to take money out of my pocket is not my friend.
Right.
I will not vote for him. That's it. That's simple like that. Okay, my dear audiences, today touching base with you about the campaign situation of my dear friend, Mr. Bruce Whitaker, Mayor of Fullerton, candidate for California Senate, 29th District. We are just laying a little picture about how things going. It looks so far very good. So stay with us. We'll be right back, please. Hello, my dear friends, my lovely audiences. Welcome back to the show, Jack Chow on the East West Show, the GNE TV. Today we're talking about the local election. For the election, I would say that one of the very most hopeful is my friend Bruce Whitaker, Mayor of Fullerton, running for California Senate 29th District seat. Not only because of the 29th District is not doing a good job, not only the fact that lots of people get so bored about having to pay extra money to gasoline tax, to registration fee, to those nonsense issues, but the fact that Mr. Whitaker, as a mayor of Fullerton, now council member of Fullerton, had stood up high and tall at several times, several historical moments that I will later touch base with you. Now, I would say once again, sir, welcome back to the show. Speaking of recall, though, has that been in history? How did the founding fathers say about recalling?
Well, I came across a quote from our founding father, George Washington, who had some very astute things to say about the relationship between elected officials and those they serve. And if you'll allow me, I'll read it because I'd like to be accurate. But President Washington in 1787 had this to say: "The power under the Constitution will always be in the people. It is entrusted for certain defined purposes and for a certain limited period to representatives of their own choosing. And whenever it is executed contrary to their interest or not agreeable to their wishes, their servants can and undoubtedly will be recalled." And so that's news for State Senator Josh Newman, who
I understand the key word is the contrary.
Yes.
Right? So let me ask my audiences, or by the way, you can send your feedback via email, say, via email, tellmydj@gmail.com of your point of views, right? So it was that contrary to the wish, to the entrustment of the public to have us people, we the people, taxed to the bone.
Yep.
We're already paying a huge gasoline tax. And on top of that, we're talking about 63 or 73 cents per gallon. And then on an annual basis, our registration raises to $175 more. Does that represent the common wish?
Or interests, or does it help our economy locally? Does it
All right,
make us
good.
more or less competitive with other areas?
Okay, should we go back to George Washington, or should we go to you?
We need to go back to the fundamentals that George Washington and the Founding Fathers put in place in this country that made this country the economic miracle of the world. And those principles apply and they serve all of us, no matter where we're coming from, no matter what our differences are. And if we go back to those principles, which is more freedom in the private sector, more autonomy for the people, and less in the greedy control of government officials, the better off that we're going to be. And so Josh Newman is just one more of the many in Sacramento who are moving in the wrong direction and taking this wonderful state in the wrong direction. And it's time that we
That's
start...
why the signatures are collected.
Yeah, to pry him out of office. And we need to do that. When we have people that betray the public trust and really go against the way they campaigned, it's a violation that does require termination. And that's what this recall will be. It'll be an opportunity for everybody to fire a state senator.
Yeah, it did say during a certain period of time.
Right.
Right? If the performance fails to show
During their term of office.
Yeah, right, term of office. And then, of course, that's the end of the term.
And yeah, you can cut the term short if they have non-performance. It's the ability of all the members of the public to enjoy what any employer enjoys, is the right to discharge an unsatisfactory employee. And that's exactly what it is.
Good. And it is always down to the very point that who you represent.
Right.
Right? Do you represent the interest group? Do you represent a certain party? Or do you represent the people at large, the constituents?
Well, to me, it's who's the boss. And should people elect me state senator, I'll say the same thing I said in Fullerton when I was elected to the council. I said, now I have 140,000 other bosses along with my wife. Right? Now, in the case of the 29th district, it'll be nearly 1 million bosses and still my wife. So.
But that 147,000 includes your wife, though.
Yeah, right, it does. It does.
Linda is a great person. I love her a lot. She's not only a beautiful lady, but she's very supportive to her husband. And, well, the pinpoint stuff, she has done quite so well, too.
She's a full partner, and should I be able to ascend to Sacramento, she'll be a key element in that, as will you and G&E and other people who keep me informed.
Very good, very good. My lovely audience, dear friends, my fellow Californians, California is really, really at a critical moment. It is a turn, if we call it. If it does turn, it is a turn. If not, we are warning you that we are on a slide of going south. All right. Not only that we are paying much higher taxes than we had been paying, but also the fact that the money goes elsewhere without us knowing, right? Well, that is a very, very dangerous situation. If you want to use the word corruption, this probably is. In order to prevent corruption from happening, though, you really want to put some new hand in there who represents neither left nor right, represents the people, we the people, us the people. Okay, my dear friend, today in the conversation is my good friend, candidate for California Senate, replacing the 29th district, my dear friend, mayor and the council member of Fullerton, Mr. Bruce Whitaker. Let's take a short moment now. When we come back, we'll find out, as I mentioned just now, historically, what has he been doing all the way up to now? How does he prove himself that he will do the X, Y, Z laid out? Exactly like I said just now, to prove a point, you really check. Now, it doesn't make any sense if I say here that I will do X, Y, Z, so on and so forth. Well, people may trust you, people may not trust you. What will prove that I will do whatever I say is to look into the back of what I have been doing all the way along to where I am, so that you have a solid handle to this person to make sure that, yes, he will do it. Because he has, number one, the vision of doing it, number two, the guts of doing it, number three, he knows how to do it. Very good. So back to my friend, Mr. Whitaker, though. Back then, with the Fullerton time, that was year of 2012, I believe. 2012 or 11, during the Kathy Thomas case, the name of Fullerton all of a sudden exploded to everybody's knowledge.
July
So
5th.
where have you been at this very moment, please?
Yeah, July 5th of 2011 was the Kelly Thomas beating, and he expired from that beating. And it started really an uproar in Fullerton about accountability and making sure that we all receive the same level of justice and that we're all treated equally and safely by law enforcement as well. So there were some questions, some very big questions that arose out of that needed to be dealt with. What I did immediately was I wrote a letter expecting our police agency to provide all details, video, audio, to make that public. As a council member, that was my demand. And I felt the public had a right to know, and it really would help in attaining justice if that were to happen right away. My wife Linda and I, we attended the funeral of Kelly Thomas in Yorba Linda as well, and met the family members and saw the grief and the concern, the shock about what had occurred. So that caused me to dedicate, at that point, Jack, I dedicated myself to saying, I want to make sure that nothing like this happens in the rest of my term in office. And thankfully, nothing has since then. But that became national and international news, and is something now that our city is known for, and I want to move beyond that. I want to make sure that we've learned that lesson and that we're going to prevent such from happening ever again.
I give him both thumbs up for this. And by the way, my audience, is to give you some reference about myself. I've been following the case the 5th day after the event. I've been writing many articles about the Kelly Thomas death. And I've been doing lots of shows with several friends of mine, attorney friends of mine, to find the root cause of the thing, to find the justice of it. Unfortunately, it went the other way. What really caught my eye was later on, I found out this gentleman, Mr. Whitaker, stood alone himself for what he believed is right. My salute came to him right away. It is not a salute for anything. I didn't know him. We did not even have, up to now, we do not have even 1 penny of a transaction, a money transaction in between us. But I respect from the bottom of my heart, because he has a kind of a mindset exactly I do. Now, question. At the time when you stood up, requesting or demanding the police department to publicize all the videos, record, and everything, did you have any kind of fear that your fellow council members, because you're 1 out of 4, right? No,
out of 5.
1 against 4.
Yeah.
1 out of 5, 1 against 4, you might be the minority, be kicked out right away, right? So were you concerned of that, please?
Well, I was only concerned because, the public sometimes goes with wherever the majority is going. So it was important for me to make the opposite side of the case for all the people, because we had hundreds of people turning out and they were demanding justice. So I'm never fearful of that, but you're right, it is a factor. There are a huge amount of people that are trying to shout you down and trying to suppress what you're doing. Suppress what I'm doing as a council member and what the public that I serve is doing. And so it caused me to have to step in and intervene in several different almost confrontations where the protests were happening in town. And luckily there were others as well, like the radio station KFI, John and Ken, they got involved. There were a huge number of people that got involved, and including publications in Great Britain and throughout the world that were saying, how can this happen? How can someone who suffers a mental disability, a homeless man, be treated this way? And is this something that we're going to have to learn to live with? That was more or less their concern.
All right, okay. And we will probably want to stretch on that matter, because it really speaks of who he is. Right. To my knowledge, to my feeling of doing this job for this many years, though, I would make it so clear, so thorough to one point that forget those slogans, forget whatever, forget the beautiful words. It is the look into what exactly this very person has been doing, especially at a critical moment, what he or she chose to do. That is the point. That is my point. That will be the point to the public. I would say about 99.9% would accept that as a rule. So stay with us. Hello, my dear friends, lovely audiences. Welcome back to the show. Jack Chow on the East West Show with GNE TV. This is one of the shows that I really want to make a point. The point being that this team, this EDI GNE team, normally between right and wrong, black and white, we don't take a stand. We don't take a point. We don't take positions. But at this critical moment, when we're about to make sure we are represented by the right person, though, we really want to provide some references. The references coming from me, a guy been on the job for that many years, a guy has seen left, right, up and down, whatever, all kinds of performances. I know what to choose. What to choose is that to look into the back of him or her, of what he or she has been doing. Back to the point, today with me is my dear friend, Mr. Bruce Whitaker, Mayor and Council Member of Fullerton, and the candidate for California Senate, 29th District. We are checking the fact if he will keep up his promise in future by looking into the past, what he has done. Does that make a logic? Very logical sound, right? Go now. Speaking of back to the point though, in 2011, July 5th or something, that night, a homeless guy, been 25 years a homeless guy, landmark, if I quote from LA Times, was a landmark of Fullerton, being lunatic, being mentally sick guy, mentally sick guy,
schizophrenic,
on the street, right? Killed by 6 police officers of Fullerton Police Department. Over that issue, there's a lot of voice that calls for justice, and later on, it came out the other way though. My friend Bruce Whitaker was the only one that stood tall to demand, as only one of the council, 5 council members, 1 versus 4, to demand the police department to let go all the records and the videos, the clips, and so on and so forth. Okay, so for that, when I learned that, the moment I learned that, I expressed my salute to a guy who I never knew. That very blink of a second, I felt I know him for 100 years already. So that is the quality I'm talking about. Next question. When you and your wife, Linda, attended the funeral though, so has there been any other council members at the funeral?
Not only no council members, but no other representatives of the city of Fullerton, including the chief of police at the time, Danny Hughes, who lived in Yorba Linda, and no member of the police department, nobody. It was only Linda and myself who were in attendance. And it was an unusual funeral. It brought out other homeless people. There were people there barefoot, without shirts. There were family members of Kelly Thomas. There were other interested parties as well. But it was one of the most memorable memorials that I've ever attended as a result.
Very good, very good. And then at that very time though, were you under some kind of fear that you kind of single out yourself? There might be some retaliations, might be some situation that out of the nowhere that you cannot handle, or might interfere your re-election stuff?
Well, you know, Jack, I've been at this for 25 years as a business person, as an activist, as a staffer working for other electeds, and now as an elected person myself. Over that time, I've received many threats over many different issues. Sometimes it's about money, sometimes it's about tragedy like Kelly Thomas. I've had other issues where my role has led me to oversee law enforcement and public safety departments, and they don't like to be taken to task. But my role in helping to oversee it in offices that I've worked in forced me to ask the tough questions. And in the end, it's actually better for law enforcement that someone is doing that. Everyone requires accountability. So that's caused blowback, and it's caused threats and other intimidation, not just from them sometimes, but from people who are supportive of them as well. So it's led to some antagonism over time, but when people say, well, you're anti-law enforcement, nothing is further from the truth. Everyone who's a property owner...
you're not anti-law enforcement.
Right.
You're anti-nothing.
Right.
You are just anti-lying, right?
Right.
You want for the truth.
And I think what shows now over time is I have a lot of law enforcement officials who are coming forward also in Fullerton saying, hey, we support you for Senate, for state Senate. And so in the end, I'd rather be respected than liked. It's nice to be liked as well. Everyone wants to be liked. But in the end, I want to be respected for the job that I do.
In other words, exactly on the contrary, that instead of having your re-election ability being heard, you gain more because the trust.
At least enough of the members of the public have evaluated that, and that's the way they land, and I appreciate that. I think it's really important that people pay attention. I do.
All right. So I know that it is quite a heroic act at that very moment. Of course, now you think about it, it is almost nothing that I attend a funeral of somebody, right? But at that very sensitive moment, a very sensitive moment for you as a council member with your wife, in a big way, attending a funeral of a one whose death was so controversial.
I think about it still a lot. I mean, so many times I've viewed that film, that video, and heard Kelly Thomas crying out and saw how this whole thing wasn't necessary and the way it unfolded and the amount of anguish and the amount of pain that came through it. And I had to do that in closed session many times. We've done it for all the police officers coming back and appealing the decisions of their being terminated and everything. So like Ron Thomas, I've sat through all those details many times.
Ron Thomas, the father.
Yeah, the father. And it takes a toll. It does take a toll on a human level. And there have been other issues over time in office that those kind of things have happened. But that goes with the territory, and I'd rather have someone who I know, like myself, is adult enough to be able to make the right separations, to make a valid judgment, and then has the courage to come forward and talk to the public about it. Those people who run and hide or shirk in the shadows and don't have any comment, have nothing to say, I don't think they serve us well. I think anyone in public office that does that probably doesn't have the courage necessary to be there.
Thank you for that analysis. And to me, that I respect the guts, the vision, and the mind of, I call it the writer's mind, the knowing what to do, knowing what's right, what's wrong. Speaking of the public though, my terminology is the following, that they are a minority of some brief guys who has the guts to walk out, and there are a big majority of the guys who know exactly what's wrong, but dare not to speak out. However, it is exactly the moment somebody who holds the position high enough, has the influence high enough to walk out, to speak freely, to speak bravely, say, hey, look this way, this is the way it's supposed to be done. Then you have the 95%, you have the 80%, 85%, 90% who supposed to stay quiet, follow.
True.
Am I right?
I think you're right. And I think you're giving me a good reason why I'm running for state senate. I need that larger megaphone. I need the ability to set the example and to try to show lots of other elected officials how it can be done the right way, what I view the right way anyway. And not to try to show some superiority,
exactly,
but to say that elected office can be done differently, it can be done better. We need to pop it up a few levels here in California. Because what I'm seeing about the state of our politics, it really does need elevating in a big way, and urgently too.
You're right, absolutely right. My dear friends, today I really appreciate the moment that I meet with my friend, Mr. Whitaker, and we're touching base with some fundamental philosophy of local politics. The politics being that, number one, you do the right thing, right? And number two, you have the guts to do the right thing. Number three, you will continue doing the right thing, right? And in order to find out the continuation of my friends holding the same ideology, holding the same set of mind, once elected to the 29th district of the Senate House of California, we will, after this moment of break, come back to check with him. How would he continue being such a fighter guy in the Senate House? So stay with us, please. Hello, friends, my lovely audience, yes, ladies and gentlemen, my dear fellow Californians. Welcome back to the East West Show. Jack Giles hosting with JNE TV. Once again, we have my friend, candidate for California Senate House, 29th District, Mr. Bruce Whitaker here, talking about his election. His election to him at this moment, though, 2018 is another election from a council membership to state senate. Yet, in my eye, it's a continuation of the right track of somebody, homegrown, with the guts, with the God bless the wisdom, with the vision that finds out California needs a new head. And we do agree, as constituents, we do agree that California, especially 29th District, needs a new head. Back to you, sir. Once again, by the way, welcome back to the show, though.
Thanks, sir.
Like I said, to guarantee, to make sure, to hold on to something about how you will do your job once elected, the best way is to check in your past, right? In the past, it is a proven, solid fact that this person, this individual, has the greatest mindset, and has the wisdom, has the guts to speak up, to stand tall, to step forward. Okay. Now, I believe California, once you're elected in the Senate House or at the California legislatures, there might be situations of the similar nature. Are you ready, sir?
I believe I'm very ready now, Jack. In fact, I was a business person, a controller, chief financial manager for a retail company many years ago, about the time Jerry Brown was last governor, in fact. And in all that time, what led me into local politics was new taxes in my home city, which led to a recall, and I was treasurer and proponent of that recall. And we recalled a majority of the city council. We repealed these utility taxes. It saved $200 million over time, kept it in the private sector. And I think that's the real benefit. It's a bottom line result. From that, I went into the Orange County bankruptcy, and I led the effort that defeated Measure R, the bankruptcy sales tax. And by defeating that, we defeated it almost 60-40 at the polls. We were outspent 30-1 in that campaign. But we've saved now $3.5 billion for taxpayers since then, and the county paid off that debt. I founded a group in Fullerton, the Fullerton Association of Concerned Taxpayers, that was the sole plaintiff in lawsuits against both the Gray Davis administration and later the Arnold Schwarzenegger administration. And it's blocked the state from illegal borrowings. They were borrowing money without voter approval, and that's unconstitutional. And we were the sole plaintiff, and we stopped them twice.
All right.
It's prevented any further of that in that
I was on that news.
So I have a record of numerous times, state, county, and local politics, a record of success. And I would compare that record with anyone over the same time frame. And I've earned, as a result, there's a current state senator, John Morlock, who is a CPA. And he's up there hitting hard as far as the numerical problems we have as far as our finances in California. And he very much wants me to join him up there. He's recommending me that voters, he's endorsed me, and he's recommending that voters place their vote for me in the 29th district because he needs help up there. He sees that I'm the kind of person that'll be the cavalry, more or less, riding to the rescue to help him out a little. Because it's a lonely, what he's doing right now is a lonely task up there. And we've done that before. I worked with him briefly at the County of Orange when I worked for a different supervisor, and when he was treasurer, and later when he was supervisor. But no, I appreciate his endorsement, and I think it speaks volumes because he's serious about policy in the same way that I am. And in order to save this state from all the waste, I mean, this state was always the aspirational state. It was a state that everybody else in the country wanted to move to. And now we see this exodus. We see people moving out of California, and it's disastrous. It really is. People who are giving up. And it's largely because of the political imprisonment that we're under right now. We need to free ourselves from that.
All right, very good, very good. I would say that nobody has a record of that speaks to such a volume, and that proves the point so strongly. And also, of course, up there at the California legislature, well, not only they need you and they need more, but they need more of individuals like you to go there to make a one-man war, a several-man war, something like that, right? Now, and there's other, okay, those are the money-related issues, regardless of tax money or pay money or any
infrastructure where we get our money's
infrastructure
worth out of
stuff like
things.
that.
Right.
And there are some other political issues,
Right.
there. And we all know there's a recall. There's a recall for the Proposition 47, 57, or even 109, AB 109. And so I would like to,
And
on
SB
behalf
1,
of,
yeah.
on behalf of my audiences or audience, to borrow some opinions of yours. Once you're there, you want to join the team or what?
No, absolutely. We want to start a new team, which is the accurate representation of what we need in California, what everybody who lives and does business in California, the type of legislature that we need, not the one that we have. So I would be very much a reformer. I would speak out for necessary reforms. We have corruption, really, at various levels in the state government. When we don't get our money's worth and when people don't carry out the jobs the way they're intended to, that's a form of corruption. We need to correct that. We need to get that back on track. And you do it both by example and you do it by calling attention and shining a spotlight on those issues. There are people who would take, not only waste our tax money, but funnel it to friends and use it for political influence. In fact, Josh Newman, it's one of the biggest problems here. In the last budget agreement, Governor Brown said, "We've got your back, Josh," and gave $20 million of walking around money to Josh Newman to win friends and influence people in a way that's never been done in California before. That speaks of corruption. That's Chicago-style politics, really. And so this single power that we have, the one-party control in Sacramento, is getting to the point where they're arrogant and they're willing to do that. Just say, here, earmark $20 million to help Josh Newman defeat the recall.
Exactly. That mentioned, that reminds me of one issue. For several times, we have money collected from the voters, from the constituents for infrastructure.
Right.
And never once did we see or have we seen money spent that way. I was asking one of my friends, attorney friends, say, well, does anybody go to jail when the money is squandered elsewhere rather than what it is exactly for? The answer was no, not until we make laws. Well, do you think that's the right way to approach to secure certain money for a certain purpose?
Well, there needs to be accountability even in government. And a lot of times when it comes down to a court situation over whether the view is that they weren't doing it for personal enrichment. But in a way, they do it for personal enrichment when they misuse money internally.
The personal interest.
Right. We had Bob Citron, who was the treasurer in Orange County that led to the Orange County bankruptcy, and his assistant, Matt Raby. They committed various crimes, lots of crimes. Nobody ever served any jail time as a result of that. And I think that's what's wrong. And that's what, even back to the Kelly Thomas thing, I think we deserve the same level of justice to be applied to us as private citizens as people in government. Whether they're higher government officials or whether they're just someone who has their hand in the till and taking the public money. We all need to be held to that same level. No one should be above the law.
Yeah. Okay, now, you were talking about doing it for self-interest, to put it into his own pocket. Right. I would say out of 100, there's a very, very little who even dare to do that.
Yeah.
However, people may do to their own interest. For example, if California had been a theater, right? Yeah. I prefer Mozart, right? Okay, now whole California sing Mozart always. Yep. No Haydn, no whoever, no Tchaikovsky, no nothing but Mozart. Okay, that is a selfish interest group, I call, right? So how do you analyze that, please?
Well, when you're elected to higher office, especially, or even local office, it's not about serving yourself. It's about serving everybody else out there. As I said
serve
earlier,
also you like.
Who is the boss, and the boss is really all your constituents. You don't really you shouldn't have the option of appropriating these things for yourself or your family or your friends.
For example, I like model trains, right?
Right.
And I play with trains, right? So let's do some trains. For the public, of course, for the public. But public do not need a train like that. Your comment?
Yeah, my comment is that you're not serving the public then, because you're only serving your own narrow interests. You have blinders on, and you might be self-satisfied. It's not your money. It's not private money. It's a misuse. That is a form of corruption.
Right. You're seeing Mozart. That's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Mozart,
I happen
Mozart
to like
only.
Mozart too, and when you mentioned Tchaikovsky,
Yeah, I know, but
I was
Mozart
there.
only, right? Mozart only.
Right. But and you know, you can justify almost any expenditure by saying, "Oh, I think all the public will benefit," or "I think all the public will use this."
Right.
But sometimes that logic gets really stressed and strained.
You are right.
We need
you're right.
adults who are going to be responsible, are going to be objective, and say, "No, let's look at this from every angle. Let's listen to the strongest arguments, and let's move in the direction where we can do the most good for the most people."
And also, one last thing that I would like to check. Once elected, you're one of the 40s, right?
Yes.
And another fact is that you are in a group of 40s that is one-way tilted, almost one-way tilted.
Right.
How do you prepare yourself of being the minor minority versus the major majority, and yet you still want your ideology bought?
Well, you need to speak forcefully when you're the smaller side of the equation. But I would use statesmanship to do that as well. And where you're not going to find open minds on the other side, the open minds are among the public. So you take those arguments and broaden them to as much in the public. I've always personally gotten along well with journalists and news reporters and people like that. To maintain those relationships, I think, is important. And over time, you earn respect. I also write a lot. I write columns, and I get great results from people when you put your opinions out there in print. So I would be very active on both those, because you are suppressed when you're in the minority. You have to make your voice extra loud in order to help get the message out. Now, you won't always carry the day.
Good.
But you can start getting more and more force applied to these issues. And by bringing the public in, you can actually overwhelm the majority sometimes where their interests are involved. That's what I would
That's the
want
kind
to
of
do.
wisdom I'm talking about. Probably what happened at the Kelly Thomas funeral would apply. Even though the opinions, whatever, the official opinions going one way though, but they are minority. And look at the so-called minority majority, look around people at the funeral though, you know exactly where the voices are,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, and outside of our city, the majority was very strongly the other direction.
Yeah,
You know, there's
yeah.
damage control. It's tendency of human beings to do damage control whenever something hits close.
Exactly.
So I almost don't blame our own police department, everybody else, for hunkering
So,
down.
in other words, when you find out you are in the pit of the minority, so the best way to do is to the major public,
Right.
okay? To collect opinions on major public and offer to them, say, hey, here, this is what the public wants.
It's your job is to dissect and splay it out
Very
and say,
good.
here, public, look
Very
what's
good,
here. Right?
very good, very smart way.
Yeah.
All right, good. My dear audience, without realizing that we're over time, time always flies faster than I thought when we are in the kind of conversation like I and Mr. Whitaker. So thank you very much, sir, for sharing. And before the election, this is not the last. We will promise you we'll see him, several times, other time. My dear audience, need your support, please. And if they want to support you, is there anything to get hold of you, please?
Yes, my website, Bruce Whitaker, www.brucewhitaker.com, or please email me, which is bwwhitaker@live.com. And my wife also will say electbrucewhitaker.com. So we have various avenues.
Donation-wise, volunteer-wise, and yard sign-wise, or sticker-wise, stuff like that?
Yes, and we could use all that help, because my type campaign does rely on a groundswell of the people. And so any amount of help that could be provided to my campaign will be greatly appreciated. Anything that people might be able to do at this stage, it could be crucial. We don't know how the election will come down.
Sure.
So we do invite everybody to provide whatever assistance they can, because my wife works very hard, I work very hard, some of my friends and volunteers, but we need, in this large a district, we need all the hands applied.
Thank you very much. My dear audience, thank you for watching. And most importantly, exercise your right. Go practice your right of democracy. And while doing it, make sure you give your vote to the right candidate. Stay with us. We will, for the rest of the few weeks, keep on talking about it. So I invite you to come stay with us till the very end. So, next time.